Hey, David Wygan here with Camille. Oh, you guys remember Camille, that cute, adorable, flirting coach from Chicago, Illinois? What's up, Camille?
Hey, David.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
You know, I'm dealing with the worst feeling in the world.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I got to tell you, you and I have talked a lot, and I got to tell you, I value, and this is something all of you need to do. I want you to write down what you value. I value. So a true friend is somebody that you can call that you haven't spoken to in a couple of months and say, the shit has hit the fan. I'm dealing with the worst feeling in the world. I fucking need your support. And a true friend gets back to you instantly and goes, what's wrong? And that's what Camille is. So all of you need a friend like that. You really do. And it's good for you to have, if you're a man, to have women friends, and if you're a woman, to have male friends, because your women friends will protect you from the nut jobs, and the man friends will protect you from the assholes, even though we still try to find them on our own on a regular basis, because we're all a little nutty and we're all a little assholey at times. The worst feeling in the world, there's a Bruce Springsteen song, Camille, called 10th Avenue Freeze Out, right? I got a new version for it. It's called the iPhone Freeze Out, where one human being who is in a relationship with another human being decides that even though the relationship was everything that was supposedly amazing between two people, they decide through the power of technology to do the modern 10th Avenue Freeze Out with the iPhone. We call it the iPhone Freeze Out. That's right. We don't get to see the little squiggly, little bubbly thing anymore. As a matter of fact, the person who you were talking to 14 times a day via text and on the phone and seeing them almost every single night, you now have to scroll all the way down in your text to go find them again to review the past text because you're trying to figure out why the fuck you're frozen out. Now, freeze outs happen for lots of different reasons. One, no, the relationship wasn't exactly what you thought it was, and they just freeze you out. That's fucking rude to begin with anyway. We've all done it. We're all guilty of it. Two, the relationship was unbelievable. The words I love you came flying out of each other's mouth 1,000 times. You were committed to building a relationship. You were committed to talking things through. And then all of a sudden something happened because one person might have made a mistake and another person might have made a mistake the same day. And mistakes kind of compounded. And then all of a sudden there's a freeze out. Well, what happened to the relationship? How can a relationship go from being so good to being frozen out? Camille, enlighten me. Why and how can people freeze each other out like that? Because I got to tell you, being frozen out in my life, the times that I've been frozen out, it's the worst fucking feeling in the world because you give your soul to somebody. You're committed to the relationship. You're committed to communicating. You're committed to building a future. You're committed to being their best friend. It's like having your best friend taken away from you, the person that you relied on every single day, all of a sudden decides to take a fucking hiatus through technology. It gets your mind thinking. It gets you wondering, hopefully, are they upset too? Are they not upset? What are they doing? How can they do this? Because we were so close. How can one thing change everything? Aren't we allowed to make a mistake in relationships anymore today? Or are we just all so fucked up that one thing we do triggers something, and then all of a sudden that one thing becomes insurmountable because it crossed the division line. You crossed the equator. You never should have gone over the equator, and there you are. You went over the equator, and holy shit, you're getting burned. Is that what modern relationships are, Camille? One thing, not even a huge thing, and the freeze out goes. I mean, I'll tell you, man, modern freeze outs, I feel like I'm fucking Siberia. It's so cold.
Well, that's what I think is how you deal with conflict, right? So like when we were talking about, you and I are more of the anxious type of when there's conflict, we need closeness. We need to like try to understand our partner, what's going on, what did I say, how can we fix this? That's how we resolve conflict. On the opposite end of that, there are people who deal with conflict by completely avoiding it. And that is like absolute hell to people who are anxious, like you and I. And I mean, who's right, who's wrong, I don't know. But I think the point is how you handle it. And like you have to find a middle road or a middle ground for that. Because otherwise, if the anxious person, if we try to give the other person space, that's completely giving into their needs while not even acknowledging or honoring our own needs. And if the other person isn't quite ready to talk to us because they're avoiding things and need time to process, them talking too soon because we want to is not necessarily great either. So finding a compromise, finding like, hey, can we set a time and date to talk in a couple days or 24 hours, whatever. Then the anxious is appeased because we have this date to look forward to. We know that we feel safe. Like, okay, we're it's not going to be indefinitely. We're not like counting down the minutes of, I don't know when they're going to reach out. We feel a lot safer. And then the other person who needs more time and space to think has that as well. So if you can approach every argument with that, no matter your style, whether you're anxious or avoidant or somewhere in the middle, like if you can basically say like, hey, our different needs for resolution here, how we deal with conflict are both important. Like that's what matters. You can get through anything with that approach. But one person dominating and freezing out the other person, which is absolute hell to the other person if that's like if they're that anxious type, you can't get through anything like that.
No, because you start to wonder. I mean, I'm an anxious secure because I read the book, and this all comes from the book Attachment, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm very secure in some ways, and I'm anxious in other ways. And anxious doesn't mean you're an anxious person all the time. It just means
Mm-hmm.
the way that you attach, and it's not negative. This isn't negative. I'm not an avoidant at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating because, like, I truly believe in a relationship. I believe it's based on communication. The weirdest thing is when you're with somebody and you're communicating every day, all day long, and you work through conflict very quickly up into a bigger conflict that wasn't even that big of a conflict, you start to think to yourself, what am I really dealing with? And was all the rest of the relationship a mirage?
Mm-hmm.
All those nights of laying together and talking about the future, all those nights of saying I love you, all those things you did, all these beautiful moments, was it real? Because you start to like, during the freeze out, you start to like think to yourself, was this real? Or, was I just fucking imagining it? And, you almost want to pinch yourself and go, well, wait a second, it was real. And then you go through anger during the freeze out. You're like, instead of being open, because people like you and I, we're communicators and talkers. So nothing can be done to you and I that can't be discussed and talked, no matter how triggered I might be. And I can tell you, I have been triggered by people I've been in relationships with. I have learned that the quicker I go and discuss and become vulnerable and open to it, the better I feel. Not only that, if I've done something to somebody that hurt them, I don't hurt anybody intentionally, ever. It's not my thing. I'm not out to hurt somebody. I'm not out to poke them. I'm not out to manipulate them. I'm not out to any of that stuff. There was nothing in my brain or mind that would ever try to hurt somebody I love intentionally, because I wouldn't want to put somebody through any pain at all and any discomfort. Because being frozen out makes you angry. There's stages of being frozen out. At first you're like, well, come on, let's just talk. It's like, this is what a relationship is. Then you go through the next stage and you're thinking to yourself, well, is this who they really are? Are they showing their true self? Is the freezer really a freezer? Is that who they really are? Is the person that they were before that not really who they are? Because all of a sudden something became hard for them to handle. And instead of relying and being open and discussing and talking like everything else was, they freeze you out and you're like, wait a second, so is this really the person? Then the anger starts to set in because the anxious starts to get angry. The longer they're frozen out, the more attempts they make, because an anxious person, when they're trying to reconnect, they give space, and then they're like, hey, look, it's like, I love you. It's like, I'm here to talk. I'm sorry. We're also the first to go like, hey, I'm sorry I hurt you. It was never intentional.
Mm-hmm.
If the freezer continues freezing, then all of a sudden the anxious starts to get more pissed off and more annoyed.
And more anxious. Like it increases whatever anxiety and hurt we're feeling tenfold if we get no response.
I'm like beyond tenfold. I mean, we become like, we're like all of a sudden, then we start thinking, we're so open to the relationship continuing. We're not even thinking, maybe in the heat of a moment, during the anxiety moment, we're like, oh my God, we feel like, because that's where the anxious comes, and we feel like, oh my God, they want to break up with me, or, oh my God, is this breaking up? Because, until you're 100% secure in a relationship, and that probably takes a good year, there'll be those moments of like, oh my God, is this person going to break up or leave me or whatever it might be? I mean, these are natural feelings with people. But the longer we're frozen out, the anger and not only that, the depression sets in. It's like you start to feel really depressed because then you start to, I don't know about you, but when I'm frozen out, I start to feel like, I don't know, Camille, I start to feel like my judgment was all wrong. Like,
yeah, you start to question things that you thought you knew.
Yeah, like, I mean, like everything. Like, you start to think like I did all this work on myself and I'm so open and loving it. I'm not perfect. Holy shit. I've told every woman I've ever dated, I'm not perfect. I'm going to do something that's going to hurt you. And it's never intentional, ever. I mean, what do you do? How do you, help the anxious people? Because most of us are really anxious people. If you think about it, I think the majority of people are anxious, right? According to that book.
Actually, the book said the majority of people are secure. So I think that's even like anxious I think 20% of the population is anxious, 25% are avoidant, and 50% are secure. And then there's the small anxious avoidant percentage. But like, I mean, just as you described being the anxious, especially if you're a secure or avoidant and you can't relate to what we're going through, please take note of what it feels like to be this 20% of the population that goes through absolute hell when we get frozen out, like you said, and we don't know when you're going to talk to us about what. We're overanalyzing anything. We're trying to think of what we did wrong. Like, it's just absolute hell. So, I mean, I think even when you need to take your space, talking with your partner, if they're anxious and they need some kind of validation or communication, and just saying so much of, I need my space, let's talk on this time and date, is a good compromise.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you too. And it's like, even just the way you put it, it's like understanding your partner instead of looking at it as you being, oh my God, this person did something to me. Look at it as a moment to grow closer. Mm-hmm. Because the anxious person, I mean, because I am secure and anxious. I'm anxious when I'm frozen out, but I'm extremely secure in my feelings, extremely secure, really, the way people feel about me. I'll get moments of insecurity and, want to crawl under the sofa and just go, oh my God, did I really say that? But in reality, I love the vulnerability, and I keep going. As long as it's being received, I'm going to keep going because I feel secure in letting it out. And I think it's the way we communicate. If you are somebody that's running or triggered or not really, really taking something to heart that somebody did, you got to look at it from couple of different sides. One, the thing that they did, maybe they crossed a line or they crossed the equator. Did they do it with harm or malcontent? Mm-hmm. If the answer is no, keep asking yourself another question. So the thing that they did, if it made you feel uncomfortable and irritated and annoyed, okay, that's fine. But did they do it to create controversy? Or did they do it because they were just trying to show you or tell you that they love you? It may not have been at the right moment. You may not have been receptive to it. But if you think, if it was the right moment, would you have been receptive to it? And that's something that I think is a huge thing. We all have these issues, these things that make us fucking want to crawl out, but you can't punish somebody for what other people did to you in the past. You can't punish a man or a woman for what other men and women have done to you in the past. You can't throw them into that thing. If they were consistent day in and day out, and this one thing they did is out of context, you have to look at the thing they did out of context and say to yourself, was it something that was done to hurt you, or was it done to make amends? I mean, because obviously, however you're getting triggered in a way that you're comparing them to other past, relationships and everything else. And if somebody's an anxious, you're right, Camille, we're sitting around and we're like fucking on death's door. I mean, it's like we go through a full range of depressive emotions when we're frozen out. We get upset, we cry, we get angry, we get pissed, we get pissed at ourselves, we seek out answers, we talk to our friends, we'll go to therapy, and the whole time we're talking to our friends and going to therapy, we're talking to try to figure out what we could have done differently and better to make the relationship better. B, still trying to make you feel great, because that's what we are. We're very loving people. So we're trying to make you feel great. And C, we're trying to be patient to allow you to come back to us. And we don't even know what to do, because we don't know whether to text back or call back or do anything. And it turns out no matter what we do is the wrong thing anyway, because you're, as a freezer, you're still activated. So if we text back right away and say we understand, you're activated. If we wait 2 days to text back, you're activated because we didn't text back right away and didn't acknowledge you right away. It's like we don't know what to do because when an anxious person is blindsided by something and they didn't expect it, the anxious person wants to just run and hide, not in a cave, but they want to really run and they want to get some help because they don't know what to do. They get lost because they love you and they're going to take a break to try to figure out how to love you more and work through it.
Yeah. And I think that we don't have any information. So the analogy that you and I were talking about is we're just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks because we don't know what to do. Giving you space is so hard for us, and yet we tend to still do that because that's what, especially society is like, oh, well, just play it cool and give space. Well, anxious people are dying inside when we're doing that. It doesn't mean we won't do it, but we don't have any information to go on. We don't know if the other person's hurt, if they're angry, what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, zero information. So all these things are going around in our head and it's absolute hell. And then I think to go a step further, and we also talked about this, David, people need to feel safe in a relationship. And after going through something like this is traumatic. Like what you're describing, you've gone through it, I've gone through it. It's traumatic, and it's if it doesn't bring you closer, and we don't get promises that okay, we won't handle the situation the same way again, so that we know that we won't have to go through this absolute hell again. We don't feel safe in the relationship. We don't feel we'll start avoiding small arguments because we're so afraid of getting frozen out. And that's no way to live. You can't live with someone like that. You have to have open communication and feel safe that no matter what you say, it's going to be a healthy communication. You're not going to have your attachment style triggered and frozen out and all this other stuff that we're talking about. So when something like this happens, especially a first argument, how you deal with it is so important and so telling of how you're going to have future arguments, and also how, especially the anxious, how safe we're going to feel.
Yeah, I mean, because you got to build back the safety with us. I mean, you're 100% true. It's like eggshell walking after this. It's like all of a sudden, it's like, something escalates via text, and both of us are like, Jesus Christ, if I not learned the fucking text lesson 100 times over, I mean, it's the stupidest thing in the entire world, texting. I mean, and we don't even want to talk about that. We'll talk about that on another episode, because I fucking hate texting more than anything, because partly, you get frozen out via texting, and it all started via texting. And, but I think something that you said that's really valid is that we walk on eggshells after that. We don't know, when is this going to happen again? Is this truly who they are? How are we going to confront things? How are we going to really express our true self? It's And everybody always says they want a sensitive person, but yet when they find somebody who's really sensitive, it's like, it's hard for somebody who's not as sensitive because they love it, because it's this beautiful, they get nurtured like never before. They get adored like never before. I mean, holy shit, are they loved. But what they don't understand is that sensitivity comes with another side, and that side is anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
The anxiety is that if you don't treat the sensitivity great during an argument, or you're not really fully aware of the sensitivity's feelings, you could really send the sensitivity away, because we don't want to take away what makes us really beautiful. And we don't want to, that's how we feel safe. We feel safe knowing that we can tell our lover and our partner anything. And that's where it gets really scary, because all of a sudden we think like, oh my God, what if one day I get angry at them? Because it will happen. And my fingers can't resist sending a text where I'm pissed off. What are they going to do? Well, the first time, they turned their phone off for 3 days, and then they didn't talk to me for 4 days, because it all escalated. Well, what's going to happen the next time?
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen when you move in together? Are you going to use your Hyatt points to go and literally hang out because, you have, because, you can't come home that night? What's going to happen? I don't lose my temper ever. I don't ever raise my voice. This is like the most I raise my voice on my podcast ever. So it's a tough road we're down. And I think a lot of people need to understand that if you're going to tell, the words I love you are great. But Jesus Christ, when you're with somebody who's got an anxious secure or an anxious attachment, make sure the actions match all the words all the time. And when you're going through controversy, instead of being a bitch or an asshole, when you write something to them, you might be pissed off and angry, and you have every right to be pissed off and angry. But follow it up with, I just think I just can't talk to you today. I love you. Let's reconnect tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Something. You have to give them a way so they can calm down in the moment and not get into their heads, because that's about the only time the anxious will get into their head. Most of the time they're in their hearts. So they'll get in their heads and they'll start evaluating things in the relationship. And then all of a sudden they'll start looking for things wrong, when in reality, they already saw all your flaws and they loved them and accepted them. And they're not looking to rip you apart at all. But the longer you keep them frozen out, the more they're going to look and just go, well, you know what? I should have seen this. This is the person that they really are. Well, it's a win-win for me. Wow, I found out who they really are now. And you don't want the anxious going down that road, because the anxious, even after a week, will still come back and love you, but they're not going to trust you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All of that. Exactly right. The longer that we have to overanalyze and sit in these fears and this discomfort and this anxiety and this pain, the more damage is done. So the way to do it is, again, it's not like people have to appease us and be ready to talk right away if that is not the other person's style. But even just having a set time that the anxious can look forward to, that, okay, the talk will happen at this time. I can be okay with that. Like that will appease us a lot. And I think it's just important to have both people's needs met as much as possible, and it's not that complicated.
Well, it's interesting. The anxious will circulate and go over things several times. If an anxious goes over things a few times, listen to them, because it really bothers them. They're trying to communicate with you because they feel vulnerable. So they're trying to communicate. And if they bring up something a couple of times, take a deep breath and go, wait a second. That comment that I said to them, or that thing that I said to them, really bothered them. Let me show them respect, and let's talk about it. It seems like it really bothered you, because they don't know sometimes when something really bothers them at all. And I know this speaking from, firsthand knowledge, because it's me. I don't know something really bothers me, so I'll tend to make a joke about it, and then I'll bring it up once or twice, and then I'll start to realize myself maybe a week later, holy shit, that comment that person said really fucking hurt. And we, because anxious people are so loving and nurturing and stuff like that, we usually get lost nurturing our partners. And then all of a sudden we realize, whoa, something else triggers us to get into anxious mode. And the next thing you know, we're having trouble communicating. All of a sudden we're good communicators, and all of a sudden we're like frustrated communicators. Why? Because we just don't know what to say. Something really bothered us. And then we start to kind of hammer a point home a little bit, where another person who doesn't operate the same way might get really annoyed and go, wow, you're just going on and on about this. I already explained it to you. And the anxious person is just going, but I know you explained it to me, but this hurt me. And this made me feel, and we have trouble saying that. It's like I do. I said, this made me feel a certain way. I don't feel good. Holy shit, I don't feel good from this. And it's hard for us to do that because it means that we're putting our trust and our full vulnerability out there, which is what we want to do, what we're trying to do. But somebody who doesn't understand this dynamic, they'll just think that we're being too needy or too emotional, too caught up in it. But in reality, we're trying to get something out and we're trying to do it really hard, but it's just not coming out. And then when it finally does come out, sometimes the other person is all annoyed, and then you just have that conflict and two people conflicting. And then, that's when, one person needs to call a timeout. Usually what happens is the one person calls a timeout because the anxious person was making them feel anxiety. And because they were feeling the anxious person's anxiety, instead of having empathy and compassion, they felt the anxiety. They called a timeout. The anxious person took it as like, holy shit, here I am trying so hard to communicate something to you. Oh my God, I finally figured it out. And the other person's literally blocking them, and not communicating with them. And they're sitting there going, oh no, I finally figured out why it's bothering me so much. Oh my God, I love you so much. It's like, I just want to share it with you. And the other person's like freezing them out. So that worst feeling in the world continues because the anxious person finally found the solution. And it took them a little while longer, but you got to have patience with it because we're really, sensitivity is great. That's why we're so easy and so beautiful. And that's the reason why you fall in love with somebody like us, because we are so nurturing and loving and great. But you got to give us that space when we're repeating something. We're basically telling you, this is making us feel anxious right now. I'm trying to get it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think, it's really telling of how if we can handle this, again, it comes back to safety. Like you're right. The anxious is like, I'm really sensitive and but I also have a huge capacity for love and caring. So it's like with this big capacity for love and caring and nurturing also comes the need for validation, probably more than like a secure attachment style would need, or especially an avoidant attachment style would need. But, it's a trade-off, and it's in return, we want to give our partners what they need too, if they're a different attachment style. But yeah, it's just, bottom line, why would you want your partner to be in pain at all? If something causes them pain, like you were just describing with anxious getting frozen out, why would you ever want to do that?
Man, I don't know. I think we're going to leave it at that because I can't even remotely do that. Have I not called somebody back for a day? Yeah, in the middle of a conflict, sometimes I have. Sometimes I've frozen them out a little bit. But usually when I'll come back a couple times, I go, I love you, I'm sorry, I love you, I'm sorry. Sometimes I just need to breathe a little bit, but I always do come back. I don't do the indefinite freeze out because I know what it feels like. And sometimes I'll do it without realizing. Sometimes I'll do it because I feel like I don't know, giving them the space and time that they need. They need space. And that's really hard. Like we talked about, somebody like us is hard to give space because we just want to go and like, we get into an argument at noon. We want to talk about it at 5. We want to be making love by 7. It's like, we're just, that's who we are. And when we have to give somebody space, we don't even know how to do it. We're just learning how to do it. And we're like a little kid. We're like, okay, look, I'm giving you space. I'm giving you space. But when we're giving somebody space, the minutes go by like, oh my God, each minute feels like hours, it's like, oh my God, it's only 1 minute longer than it was before. Oh fuck, how am I going to make it through the day? That's the first sign that an anxious person will say, like, how am I going to make it through the day? They're starting to have a little anxiety. They don't know how they're going to make it through the day. It's just, we're highly emotional people. That's what makes us so easy to love. And that's why we can love so great. But it also makes us very frustrating at times unless you understand how to really communicate, and how to really talk and how to have compassion and empathy for this, because it can really be avoided. I mean, my friends don't make me anxious at all. I've had relationships that haven't made me anxious at all. Like at all. I had a long-term relationship. I never felt anxious ever with her. Never. She knew when things were going weird with me. She listened carefully. She followed the signals and the signs. And she made sure she fucking kept saying, are you okay? I'm here to listen. Because we don't just blurt things out. Sometimes it takes us, like I said, a few days to get it all out. We take it in, we process it. So you're shutting somebody out. You're shutting one of the most tender souls out there. We're very tender. And we might drive you crazy at times, but nobody's perfect, because the one thing about the anxious is that we're so empathetic that we literally can go and date any type of attachment style because we are so much about pleasing other people. We're so, oh my God, I can't believe I hurt somebody. It's like when I hurt somebody I love, Camille, oh my God, I'm so fucking upset. Mm-hmm. Even though they've hurt me, I'm thinking about like, well, let me apologize to them. Even if I was frozen out, I'll still make another move going, hey, what are we doing? I'm still thinking of things to do. Should I send flowers? Should I, it's like, I love love. I really do. I think it's the greatest feeling in the world. And what we talked about today, is the worst fucking feeling in the world.
Amen.
Camille, how can people reach you?
They can find me at masterofflinedating.com. And if you're a single woman who isn't too thrilled about online dating or apps, come check me out.
Perfect. 10-minute daily reality. Check out, man. Every day is good. Today was vulnerable. Today was full of anxiety. Today was our day.